So my name's Shanta Brandt-Larsen. I welcome you to Motherhood Unplugged 2.0. What the summit's about really is actually 5 years of research into what makes children successful in their adulthood. And success not really being what you would actually think in terms of, okay, I've got a fantastic job title, which is VP of sometimes pencil sharpening, but actually in terms of our future happiness, in terms of our leadership capability, in terms of our perseverance. So these key things correlating back to what happened in childhood. And there are pretty much two key things. The father was only just on cognitive ability, but the mother was pretty much everywhere. That you could see in terms of the success of their future children. And that differed quite differently in terms of different activities that they did. Some of them active play, for example, very interesting. Some of them make-believe play on how much they could imagine. And those activities that they did with their mother really impacted their happiness with life, on how much they could deal with clarity, uncertainty versus clarity. So I really want to introduce Wendy Powell, founder of MUTU Systems, and there's a real reason why I've sought you out. It took some time to kind of go through and make sure that we got you on board. And this is a very personal one. I really struggled for 4 years. I didn't start your system until 4 years. So Kai, my son, is 4 years. And you wouldn't think that, because I'm actually a trained yoga teacher. I'm a trained yoga, I practice, I run. But I've always had big boobs. That's never going to change. But I still had this tummy. So I didn't have separated muscles, but this tummy kind of coming out. And it would never change how much I ran, how much I did anything. And I came across then going, okay, what can I change? And it clicked when I'm thinking about next generation. We are still trying to, our roles have changed. So much, but actually what you do in your system is you draw back in terms of body alignment. You draw back in terms of nutrition. So all of those problems that I was facing, because I still have to go to work in my heels, or I no longer do. I kind of battle Clarks and got my flats. I'm very good at nutrition. That wasn't, really the problem. My husband's Danish, so rye bread is, no problem. But just the types of exercises that I was doing, and I now have on my Christmas list barefoot, running shoes. So it was about rethinking the systems, your health, your posture, your nutrition for today, for this generation being a mum. How can I do that to have a healthy, fit body that's aligned?
Yes.
How can I get my tummy back in that makes me confident? And, I'm not saying, your exterior look is, everything, but it makes me confident and healthier and happier. And that to me links to my children. So hence, that's why we're speaking and why we have the summit, because health is a very important part of this summit for the people joining.
Yeah. Oh, so that's a lovely summary of what you got from MUTU as well.
Yeah. So my first question is, what do you love most about being a mum?
What do I love about being a mum? It's funny, isn't it? I mean, my kids are 10, see, I'm having to think. They are 10 and 11, about to be 12. So it feels like I'm out of that. I'm out of the baby toddler phase. I've kind of done that. I'm not the new mum anymore. So being a mum is kind of, it's and has been for, or feels like forever, kind of been my reality, if you like. So it's kind of, what do I love most about it? I mean, I think, I suppose it kind of gives us purpose, doesn't it? It gives us, this is why we do what we do. This is why I want to be this role model. This is why all this natural movement and eating well and, but also doing it in a way that is actually fun as opposed to obsessive. I love being able to sort of be part of, I've got a girl and a boy, being part of them growing up as they sort of face the world that is obsessed with how we look and all of those sorts of really toxic messages that they're receiving. So I love that it's sort of, I feel like what I do is very blurred in my family life, as you can imagine. My business and my family life are somewhat blurred. But what I try to do for the women that I serve is sort of spills over to how I try to live for my kids. So I love being able to do that for these two little people, and to see these two people that are so different, to each other, to me, to my husband. It's like, where did they come from? Who are these people? And I love, it's wonderful. It's you love them with an absolute fierce kind of love that you never knew you were capable of. They also drive you absolutely crazy.
For sure.
I've got a daughter who's a tween going on teenager, and so it's a whole new set of challenges. It's a roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah. I would totally agree. So you kind of mentioned how many kids you have already, but one of the things I know is that you changed your career. You were not all, you went into this field. So how would you define yourself since becoming a mum? What kind of made that change? You talked about purpose, but did something change when you became a mother?
I had changed careers before I became a mother, I think it definitely changes, because all that, any concept of before not having time is clearly ludicrous once you've had children, because it's kind of, I often say, we used to say when the kids were little, like, I wish we'd appreciated the Sunday morning lie-in, or I wish I'd appreciated, because of course your reality before children, you don't actually appreciate any of those things. That's just your reality. And then the babies come along and you're just like, oh, that was easy. I suppose where it changes is just your obviously your priorities change, your perspective changes, and it's I struggle with the concept even of sort of balance, really, because it's all just part of the same mash, isn't it? I'm not quite sure one can separate them. I've never come across somebody that totally can have a personality here and a completely different one over here. So
all those roles blend from that point
exactly.
And you have to try and balance those different roles that you play and kind of go up and down. And like you say, time, I don't know what happened with time before, what I did with it before, because now I'm booked up every weekend until next year.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what challenges did you face in that then?
In which, switching careers or?
Yeah, so you've kind of then you the family came, and like you said, you changed your career before then, but what I see is that it's super effective and successful. What challenges do you face with a family in doing that and blending all of that? Because that can be difficult.
Indeed, but I think sort of there's not many careers, unfortunately, for women where having a baby makes you better at your job. Mm-hmm. In my case, having a baby made me better at my job, because I was specialising so I used to work in media and advertising many moons ago. I refer to that as my former life. And then in 2001, I trained as a personal trainer, and kind of so the last 16, 17 years I've been in this world. But I had started to specialise in pre and postnatal recovery and work from a fitness and wellness element before I had my own kids. Mm-hmm. So when you're in that place, I'm obviously going on all the courses, and I had lots of bits of paper that told the world I was an expert at this stuff, but I'd never done it. So it would be, I'd kind of turn up on the doorsteps of my poor sleep-deprived clients, and sort of being all fit and skinny and well slept, and they just look at me and like kind of, you haven't got a clue, have you? I'd be like, no, I've got this bit of paper. It makes me an expert. It wasn't. And then, of course, I had babies of my own. And all of those things that I thought, well, I've just got to do this. I've just got to do the right exercises and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, it all goes to shit, and then none of it quite works out how you think it's going to. And so for me, sort of I was already, literally dipping my toe in, but I was already in that world of pre-postnatal fitness at that time. I've kind of moved away from a lot of the fitness element of it now, but by having children of my own, I actually experienced it. So it actually meant that I got it. I understood what my clients were feeling. I understood how their bodies had changed. I understood all of those things. So so it kind of gave me a very different perspective, and it got me away from what I call ever being what I probably used to be, which is the self-righteous personal trainer. So it was kind of well, you've just got to eat this. Like, what's the matter with you? Chia seeds, and what's the problem? I was like, well, actually, that's not very practical. So it's kind of it kind of put a whole sense of reality, and I think made me infinitely better to do to be able to do what I do and to serve women in a realistic and helpful, genuinely helpful way.
So you walked in their shoes effectively.
Precisely.
And is that when you start, because I obviously I haven't seen pre and post, is that when you started, I guess, to kind of remodel things? Because what I get is that I can download it, so I can do it on the go. So I just flew back from London, and then last week I flew back from Paris. I don't need any equipment. You know, you don't have to do it in sequence. You can do it in like different bits. So it might be if I only have. Is that when you started to reformulate? Actually, this might be someone who doesn't have time, that they might need to mix it up a little bit, or?
Exactly. I mean, MUTU system in its form. So when I had my kids, I was, when I had my daughter coming on 12 years ago, I was a personal trainer, and I had a small company, a small business at that time where other trainers worked for me. So I was specialising in that area, but I hadn't actually created the programme, as it were. I was kind of, I was still doing kind of more generic, more general training for mums. So I didn't start to, so I put the first version of MUTU system together in 2010, so 7 years ago. And that was when basically that came about, because I realised that I wanted to kind of put it into a format that I could reach more people, because I had a small team of trainers at that time, all based in Southwest London, which was where I lived at the time. But you know, that's, you know, I could serve people in about 3 postcodes, you know, as opposed to sort of doing something that's online where you can actually get this information out to so many more people.
Okay. So that's interesting that you've done it that way. I also think it serves actually the needs of what women need today, because it's very difficult to actually, if I take the time to travel to get into a gym, I've not seen one for ages, for a number of years.
I don't go to the gym. That's my gym. Look, I've got it. It's all here.
Okay. And so what tools and advice have you found useful being a mum?
Well, tools, I'd say I don't know if I should refer to my husband as a tool, but it's probably not a good description. But I mean, you know, things have really, the situation, the business, everything is a very, very different animal to what it was sort of 7 years ago and whatever. But in the last few years, sort of probably since about 2011, I think, you know, my husband essentially runs everything else in our lives, and I run the business. So I have a very supportive network of people around me. So in terms of what helps me, I mean, it's they used to say behind every great man, you know, well, in my case, it's the other way around, but it's, I can run this business and sort of, and serve the tens of thousands of women that we do now. You know, I can travel around the world. I can run my business and do all those things, because I've got a husband that picks up the pieces, literally everything.
So unit.
Yeah, but I mean, as well as that, I mean, goodness, in business, you know, it's, from a family point of view, it's support network. I mean, I'm very blessed as far as support from family, etc., is concerned. You know, I mean, I very much acknowledge that many women, many mothers would not have the kind of just somebody to pick up behind you like I do in that sense. You know, very lucky with my family. And then from a business point of view, you know, I've got, again, it's about the people. I have an amazing team. I have pulled together the most incredible group of mainly women that work for me. I have great coaches. I always have at least one great coach or mentor in my life. So yeah, it takes a village, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, for you and for the kids. Mm-hmm. And so, what's your focus now? What's next? What's next?
I mean, it's there's, oh gosh, like 1,000 things business-wise. The MUTU is growing so fast. It's kind of just really exploding, and has been for the last year or so. So from a business point of view, everything, I mean, last week we took on 3 new people. You know, it's kind of, everything's just exploding in a good way, which is great. So my focus is growing this to reach more and more women, and to keep on tweaking it, sometimes small tweaks, sometimes big tweaks. But I mean, the version of MUTU system that's out there now is, I think it's version 4. I think I'm right in saying. I'm always improving it. I'm always learning. I'm always working with physiotherapists, alignment specialists, pelvic health specialists, to make sure that what I do is safe and is helpful.
Yeah.
And we're also always getting feedback from our customer base. We have a really engaged customer base who love to tell us what they think, which is brilliant. So it's kind of, if something's this is it, when you create something, certainly when it's an online system or something like that, you can formulate it to kingdom come, but until people are actually using it and telling you how they use it, you don't know. So it's so we're always tweaking and changing. So the focus is, however big it gets, is that my focus is always the end user. It's always the mum on the end of the email who is actually, as you say, logging on and doing the program. That's sort of, and if it ever starts to spin, that she's who we always come back to.
Brilliant. And is there anything blocking or anything slowing you down or blocking you? Because life is real. There are things that crop up.
Blocking me or slowing me down? Not really. I don't really let anything. No.
Okay. No, that's good. And what experiences? So there were two things that I mentioned. One is for the mother, and this really making an impact on mums. And I think that's the reason why it's growing, quite honestly, because there isn't anything else that I found that did what it did. Yeah. The second thing is sense making. So the type of activities that you do with your kids were quite influential on their success. So my actual personal question to you is, what experiences do you want your kids to have that grow them and help them to make sense of the world?
We have a kind of fairly bohemian existence. Okay. So what I mean is we travel a lot, and I love to be able to. I travel for business a lot, but we also travel as a family a lot. I mean, my kids have been to, Ethiopia, Argentina, Kenya, America many times, Sri Lanka. It goes on and on. Very, very lucky kids, without question. But one of the things that my husband and I are very, very conscious of is to ensure that they see as much of the world as we can possibly show them, which I just think is so important. And it's like, for the last year or so, my kids have both been in an internet-based school, so we can travel and they can just log on and go to school. But literally just a few weeks back, my eldest, she came to us and said, "I've decided I want to go back into high school." She kind of presented us with this kind of Dragon's Den style pitch of why, and told us that was what she wanted to do. So now she's in school. It's very impressive. So she, so right now I've got a 12-year-old in sort of, mainstream school, and I've got a 10-year-old son who's in internet school. So it's kind of, we very much encourage them to. I want them to be self-aware. I think if there's one skill that is more valuable than any for all of us, it's self-awareness. It's know who you are, know what you're good at, know what you give to the world, and know what you're really quite rubbish at and somebody else should do. It's about celebrating what they're great at. I don't get hung up on, those two subjects that the grades aren't great in. I'd much rather talk about the ones that they are great in. So it's kind of very much trying to encourage the children all the time to make decisions for themselves, like this decision for her to go back into school. That was it was thought about. She talked to some of her friends about it. She'd really formulated it. So it was I felt proud of her, because I felt, this is an 11-year-old girl who is making a very conscious decision about what kind of school she wants to go to. So that's really cool. They're both very confident in, they're good travelers, they're very capable, they can find their way around on a subway map wherever they are in the world, sort of thing. I understand that a lot of that comes from that they're very lucky kids, they get to travel a lot, but equally what we also are trying to do the whole time is, to encourage that independent thinking and self-awareness, and to understand themselves, and also to take the time to understand other people as well.
And what internet curriculum are you following? What are you using?
So the school that they were in, they do IGCSEs, so it's the International GCSE curriculum.
Yeah, okay. Pretty
and we don't have to teach them. It's not, God, I haven't got time to do that. But so they kind of log on to live classes. That's the way it works. It's UK-based school, yeah.
Okay, pretty cool. And I'd have to get your feedback on where to travel, because I'm doing 40 days around the world for my 40th next year. So yeah, and my sister's in Ethiopia, living there at the moment. So we're going to start there.
We had an amazing time there. I was out there. It was not a couple of years back, and there's a hospital just outside Addis that MUTU System supports, the Hamlin Fistula Hospital, where they help women with childbirth injuries, fistula, which is a particularly horrible issue that a lot of women in the third world have to deal with. And we support that charity, so we visited the hospital. So
wow.
my kid, so with the kids as well. So they were there, sort of. We met the women at the hospital and the doctors and stuff like that. And then we had a week in the Simeon Mountains and went to see the monkeys.
And have you been there for New Year? Because I'm intrigued how they're 7 years behind us.
Yeah, I know. It's really, and the time too, the time and the date, like completely. I never got it. I never understood it.
Okay.
I never knew what time of day it was.
Okay. So 2 last questions. What's the one thing you would go back and tell pregnant you'd whisper in the air that you wish you knew before becoming a mum?
Partly appreciate the quiet life now. But I think the biggest thing I'd say is just don't, we're all just doing our best. It's kind of, I know we hear a lot, certainly online and in our culture, about the sort of the mum guilt bullshit that's out there. And it's just, everybody's just doing, the best they can and making the best decisions they can. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, taking my kid out of school and putting him in internet school and then putting him back, is it all traveling around the world I don't know. But it feels good. It feels right for us. So we're running with it. So it's kind of, it's not, I'd say, just you run with what feels right for you and your family, and don't worry about others' judgment, and equally do not judge the others. It's like you mentioned earlier, walking in their shoes. Unless you've walked in her shoes, shut up, because you have no idea what she's dealing with this morning, what week she's had. So just, a little bit of, just don't worry about the others judging you, and don't judge them would be the biggest thing I would say to anyone, I think.
Okay. And finally, is there anything you want to share that, and I'm excited about this, that you're working on, that you want to share with the summit? Because I would love everyone to try kind of what I've gone through. So is there anything you want to share?
I'll tell you a little bit about, so what MUTU System is about is, probably one thing that sums it up for me is the most common piece of feedback we get, which is, I thought I was just buying an exercise program and I got so much more. And that's sort of what we hear a lot. And it sounds like that was sort of your experience too, which is, you kind of, there's a whole, I passionately believe that we are so much more than our stretch marks or our tummies or our thighs or whatever else. That is not the goal, and that's what MUTU System is all about, and the whole MUTU life, as we call it, which is what sort of so much of our membership base sort of becomes very engaged with, which is it's the end goal is not the flat tummy or the skinny thighs. They don't matter. They really don't. It's kind of as you said before, what MUTU does is it strips back. It strips back to a body that works. And that's sort of where MUTU starts. Every woman deserves a body that works. And by works, I mean a pelvic floor, a core that does its job without us having to think too hard about it. That's where we start. And so we don't start planking and crunching, because planking and crunching with a tummy that the muscles don't work in is a total waste of time. So we back up and we back up and we back up. Where MUTU is totally unique is that we start with the connection, because we have cut off. And when we don't like what doesn't feel or look like we feel it should, we cut off from it. And we've all been there, that's not mine, don't want to know. And so MUTU gets you connected again, and that's where it starts. It starts with a connection, an emotional and psychological connection with your body, and then it moves on to getting that body to work, and then the aesthetic stuff comes later. But importantly, what comes with it is that confidence, that inside and out confidence that you are worthy of a body that works, that you deserve that. And that makes us feel good, and as you said at the beginning, then that's what makes us great role models for our children and everything else. Because I don't know who said it, but if Mama ain't happy and all that, it's like they were right. We're a lot more used to the people that love us when we're happy and functional and confident, and we feel good about ourselves, and that's sort of what MUTU does.
Okay. And that's pretty much it. So I'd love to thank you. And it's really weird. Before I started recording, it's really funny because I hear your voice daily, and you're actually there. um, so yeah, it's great to actually interview you and meet you personally, and actually just be inspired by actually your journey as a mum and what you're giving back. So
Thank you.
great.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, Wendy. Okay.
You're welcome.